Hi guys, so let's start with today's session. Okay, so none of the colleges are online. So this was a recap of the yesterday's session where we saw for loop, if else statements. Now let's start with today's session. So what are the topics that we are going to cover today? We'll look at loops, for loop, while loop, do while loop. We'll look at the examples for these loops. Then we'll look at methods. Alright. So what are loops? Why do we need loops? So loops are nothing but if we want to execute a set of instructions or statements again and again. So let's say if I have to add 1 to a and print I have a number 0. What do I want to do? I want to add 1 to that number 10 times and print it every time I have added 1 to it, right? So what will I have to do? I'll have to write it num is equal to num plus 1 print num, again num is equal to num plus 1, right? So let's look at the program, simple program. So consider this scenario. Why do we need loops? Public class loop example, loop example public static void main string args. So let's say I have a number 1. So what is this? Int is data type, num is variable, equal to is the assignment operator. What is 1? 1 is the value or literal. So now what is the program? What do we want to do? So what do we want to do? We want to do a simple scenario, it's a simple case where we want to add increment num by 1 every time and print it. How many times? 5 times. So what do I have to do? First I print num, then I update num. How do I increment num by 1? Num is equal to num plus 1. Now what is the value of num? Num becomes 2. I again have to write system.out.println num. Now again I have to increment num by 1. Again I will do I have to do it 5 times. So what do we see? What do we see here? What do we notice here? We are doing the same operation again and again. Print, increment, print, increment, print, increment. print increment till when? 2, 3, 4, 5 till the value becomes 5. I am writing the same instruction again and again. So what if I have to print till 100? So will I write this instruction 100 times? What if I have to do it till 10,000? Will I repeat this instruction 10,000 times? Will I write them 10,000 times? It will take me 3 hours to write the instruction 10,000 times. So is there a better way of doing it? Can I do it in lesser number of instructions? Yes. The answer is loops. The answer is loops. So what all loops are there? There is while loop, there is do while loop and for loops. So we'll start with for loops and we'll look at what all these loops are. So let's start with while loop and then we'll come on to for loop. So what does a while loop do? So while loop, it takes a Boolean expression. We already know what a Boolean expression is. We have covered this in the last classes. What is a Boolean expression? A Boolean expression is a statement that uses relational or logical statements to get a Boolean value, right? So what is the syntax? While Boolean expression. So like we saw for if condition, if true, execute this. So similarly, this will keep on executing these statements till the time this is true. Till the time this is true. So what will happen? The loop body will continue to execute as long as the condition is true. What is the condition? This Boolean expression is the condition. We write the condition here. This will be my condition, right? Looping condition. So it says if the loop body contains a single statement, the curly braces are not necessary. So if there is only one statement, we don't need these braces. If this is false, the first time we enter this is false, no statement will be executed. So let's go and look at the example. So what did we see? We had to repeat these statements again and again. Is there a better way of doing it? So the answer was yes. So let's take an example. Public class while loop. Always remember, it's a standard practice. The name of the class will always start with a capital letter. Name of the class will start with a capital letter. So what do we have? We have num1. Okay. Now what do? We check while num is less than, want to print it how many times? Let's say 10 times. While num is less than 10, what do? System dot out dot println num. Now what we do? Num is equal to num plus 1. Now let's see what is happening here. Let's save the program first. What is the name of my class? While loop. While loop dot Java. So what are we doing here? Num is equal to 1. While is num less than 10? When we start the execution, num is less than 10. So what happens? It enters into this while loop. Now it prints the value of num. What is the value of num? Num is equal to num is equal to 1. Then we update the num value. Num becomes 2. Then it again, after here, it again goes here. It again goes here. So what happens? After it executes, after it executes, what will it do? I can't control this arrow, sorry. So it will come from here to here. We'll again check. We'll again check the Boolean condition. If it is true, it will again execute this. Again from here it will go back here. Again it will check Boolean expression. If it is true, it will again execute these statements. So what will happen here? It sees num is 2. It again goes back and sees num is less than 10. What will happen then? It will again print num equal to 2, update it to 3. Again from here it will go back to here. 3 is less than 10, true. What will it do? It will print 3. Then it will increment num to 4. Then again it comes back here. Is 4 less than 10? Yes, true. It prints 4. Then it comes back to here 5. Is 5 less than 10? True. Then what will it do? It will print, then it will be 5. Then increment it to 6. After it becomes 6, what will happen? It will again go check. Is 6 less than 10? True. It prints 6. This will continue till where? Finally it will become 10. Is 10 less than 10? Is this true? Is 10 less than 10? No. 10 is equal to 10. What will happen? It will exit. It will not execute. It will continue. So what happens if it continues? It will execute this statement. Loop completed. So let's run and see the program. What happens? How do we compile it? Java C. Java C. Java compiler while loop dot Java. Java while loop to run it. See what happened? We'll see it side by side. Num was less than num was 1. 1 is less than 10. Yes. Print 1. 1 was printed. See, 1 was printed. Then num was incremented to 2. Num became 2. So it did not execute this statement. It was in the while loop. It went back to while. Then it compared 2 less than 10. What did it do? It compared 2 less than 10. 2 is less than 10. It printed 2. Then again it printed 2, incremented 2 to num to 3. It did not execute this statement. Loop completed was executed only when num became 10. Is it clear? I'll pause here for 30 seconds. If there are any doubts, please ask me.
Yeah.
Let's continue then. So we saw this while loop. What happens in while loop? What happens in while loop? The loop will continue to execute as long as the condition is true. Loop continues to execute as to until the condition is true. The looping condition is tested upon entry. Okay. So another thing that we forgot to see here is, so what happens if my num was 10? Now what will happen when my num is 10 initially? What happens when my num is 10? Okay, let me increase the font size. Okay, I think this should do it. So what will happen now? Okay, I rerun the program. What happened? Because num was 10, if is 10 less than 10? No. So this was not executed. All the statements were skipped. All the statements were skipped. Okay. Okay. So this was not executed. Directly we came here, we checked the condition, it was false. What happened? We did not execute these two lines, we directly executed this. Loop completed. So if the looping condition is false upon entry, the loop body will not execute. What is the loop body? This is the loop body. So let's do the breakdown. What is this? This is looping condition. Looping condition. What is this? This is loop body. Everything between these brackets is called loop body. Everything between the brackets is called loop body, right? So this loop body is only executed when this is true. Till the time this is true. It only stops when this is false. So what happens if this is always true? Is this a valid while loop? Yes. Now what will happen if this is true? Let's see what happens. Wait, let's reopen it, and I think that should increment the size. Yes. Now what will happen? I come. Mhm. Now what will happen? There is an error. Line number 9. What is it saying? The error is unreachable statement. What? So let's comment this out. Now what will happen? What will happen? What happens now? When I run this, it keeps on executing infinitely. It does not stop. So it has gone to such a big number. Why? Why is this happening? Why is this happening? Hmm? See, it went till how long? 44,75,793, and it would have continued. So why didn't it stop? Because the condition was always true, right? It came here, it prints the value of num, then increments num by 1, and then again goes to which is always true. So this continuously executes this. Got it? So what is the next loop? The next loop is called do while loop. The next loop is called do while loop. So what is the difference between the while loop and do while loop? So in while loop, what do we do? What did we see? We come here, we check the condition, and then we execute the statements only if it is true. Only if it is true. Now what will happen in case of do while loop? In case of do while loop, first we execute the statement and then we check the condition. So we say do whatever you have to do and then check the condition. If the condition is true, we again go here. Otherwise, we stop. Otherwise, we stop. So let's look at the example. So in this example, because num was 10, we checked if num is less than 10, which was false. So it did not execute. Now let's look at the example for do while loop. Write the class, then we write the entry point for the program, which is the main method. We write the entry point and the main method. What do we write here? Int num is equal to 1. What do we do? What do we do? Print the number, and then num is equal to num plus 1. Till when? While num is less than 10. While num is less than 10. What do I save it with? What should be the name of my file? Same as my class name. Same as my class name. Now what will happen here? It will first execute these statements, and then it will check the condition. Then it will check the condition. Got it? So let's try executing this program. So it passed. There are no errors. So let's execute it. Let's execute it. So what happens here now? Let's see it. Now we entered here. Num is 1. What happens now? It prints 1, increments num by 2. Now num is less than 10. Num is 2, which is less than 10. So again goes back to do. Again goes back to do. So what happens? Because num is less than 10, it again goes back to do. What will it do now? Again print num. Num is 2 now. And then it increments num to 3. 3 is less than 10. 3 is less than 10. Again goes back to do. It prints 4. Again it increments it to 5. Till that time num becomes 10. What happens when num becomes 10? 10 is not less than 10. We have seen that. 10 less than 10 is false. 10 less than 10 is false. So now it stops here. Got it? So in this example, what did we see? We declared num as 10. We declared num as 10. Right? When we declared num as 10, the while loop did not execute. Why? Because at entry point, the condition was false. This condition was false. So it did not execute anything. But in do while, if I make it 10, now even though this condition is false, even though this condition is false, but first he asks the do while loop to execute the statements and then check the condition. So what will happen now? Even though the condition is false, this loop will still execute at least once. So this loop will still execute at least once. We compile the, did we save the program? Always remember, save the program, then compile the program, and then run. What do we do to compile? Java C file name dot Java. How do we run? Java class name. Java class name. So what happens when I run this program? It prints 10. Why? Because even though the condition is false, do while loop always executes at least once. So remember, do while loop will always execute at least once. So the same examples that we looked at. Okay. So what does x plus plus do? What was what does x plus plus do? X plus plus increments the value of x, right? If I do num plus plus here instead of this, it is exactly the same. This is equivalent to printing and then incrementing it by 1. So always remember, if we write plus plus afterwards, it always increments after it sees a semicolon. After it sees a semicolon. And what is the difference between this plus plus x? Okay, let's see. Let's see the difference between writing it first and writing it afterwards. Public class increment operator. Public static void main. What does it mean? This is the entry point for your program. JRE always starts execution from where? Void main. What will happen now? I have a variable num equal to 1. What will happen if I say system.out println num plus plus semicolon? Okay, now let's execute this. So how will we execute this? Java C Java increment operator. So what was the value of num? 1. And num 1 plus 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 increments it when? When does it increment it? After seeing the semicolon. So now let's say I print it again. This is a very important concept from point of interview. Generally, they give these questions in the exam written test. They can ask you these questions in the interview. So what will be the interview question? If I have println this, and if I print it here, what will be the output? See, 1 and then 2. Num was 1, I did println num plus plus, it still printed 1. Why did it print 1? Because it did not see semicolon. After that statement ends, it has printed, it increments num by 1. Increments num by 1. What is the value of num now? 2. Which we see here. Which we see here. Now, let's see this. Now, what if I increment the num first? What does this mean? Increment the num variable first and then execute the statement. What does it mean? Increment num by 1 first and then execute the statement. What will be the output for this program now? Take 10 to 20 seconds to think about the output, and then we'll execute and check. Think what will be the output of this program. Increment num first and then execute the statement. So if we write num plus plus, what does it mean? Execute the statement and then increment num by 1, right? So what is the meaning of this? Execute the increment the num by 1 first and then execute the statement. So what will be the output for the above program? This question is generally asked in the interviews. In the written test, they might ask you this question. So the output for this program will be, let's see, should be 2, 2. What happens? What is the output now? It is 2 and 2. How? Print statement, we say increment num first and then and then print it. So increment 1 by 1, which is 2, print it and then print the value. Is it clear? Okay, let's do a practice problem now and see how many of you can guess the right output. Class practice problem loop. What will be the output of this program? Take 5 minutes and tell me. And also here. So we'll pause here for 1 minute. Please try this problem. Then we'll see how it is executed, how this program executes. Please give it a try. These concepts are really important. These are the basis of your foundation for programming, right? So please try this problem.
I hope you were able to execute. So let's think about it. What is happening? Num is 1. 1 is less than 5. Yes. What does num plus plus mean? Execute the statement and then increment num. What is the statement? Print num. So what will be the output of this program? Let's see. Sorry, we are doing the wrong. We did not save this file. So what is the problem name? Practice. Again, the file name should be same as your class name, followed by dot java. What is the file name? Practice problem dot java. How do we execute this? First we compile it. When we compile, what is executed? When we compile, what is the output? A dot class file is generated, which is also called bytecode. Which is also called bytecode. So now see, how did this execute? Initially num was 1, right? Num was 1. What happened? 1 is less than 5, printed 1, right? Then num became 2. 2 is less than 5, executed. Then num became 3. 3 is less than 5, it executed. Okay, now but where did this 5 come from? 5 is less than 5. Not true, right? So let's, to avoid this confusion, let's write this. Loop stopped when num equal to value. So loop stopped when num is equal to 5. I hope this is clear. Okay. Now let's modify this example. Now what will be the output for this? When will the loop stop? When will the loop stop? Increment num and then execute the statement. Try this problem now. Quickly try. We'll wait for 30 seconds only. So what happens here? Num is 1. So what will be the first value that is printed? It will be 2. It will be 2. Let's see. Compile it, produces bytecode, and then we run it. See, 2, 3, 4, 5. Why? We increment the value of num first and then print it. Right? So yeah, where can we mistake errors? We make errors in loop. So what are the most common, mistakes that we can make in the loop? So
If we do this loop, this is not an endless loop, this is correct loop. Why? Because we are incrementing x here, right? But what is happening here? What is happening here? Int x is equal to 0. Do print x while x is less than 10. We are never incrementing the value of x. X is always 0. So it will endlessly print 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0. Right? It will continue to print 0, 0, 0, 0, 0. Got it? It will never stop printing 0. It will stop sometime, right? When your program runs out of memory. But for this, it will wait for your program laptop to run out of battery or power, right? It will endlessly keep on printing 0. Got it? So most common mistake that we make is we don't increment the variable. So always take good care, otherwise we go into a endless loop. If we don't increment x, like we saw earlier. So all the loops have 4 components which are very important, right? First step, we have to initialize the condition test variable. We should assign a initial value to it, right? Then test the variable and write the loop body and increment loop variable, right? What happens if we don't increment the loop variable? Then it will go into an endless loop. So if we forget this step, what happens? We go into a endless loop. We'll go into an endless loop. Is it clear? Okay, let's look at the example. So let's look at an example. So now let's look at an example for loop now. Okay, where is our for loop? Yeah. So now what is for loop and why? What is while loop and what are the differences between these two loops? And which loop should I use when? Are the few questions that we need to answer. So we saw that while loop has the following parts: initialize the loop variable, test the loop variable for the condition, loop body, and increment loop variable. Right? Similarly, we have another loop which is called for loop. And what is the syntax for loop? Like we have a loop variable here, we have a loop variable inside for. We give the initial value here, right? So this first part, x equal to 0 is written here, where a equal to 0. We write the condition here. We do write the condition here. That condition is written here. And we increment it. And increment is done here. Is it clear? Right? Then the same statement, all the statements come here. So let's look at an example. So the same program that we were writing, we can write it with for loop as well. right? So how do we write for loop? For, we don't need to write num equal to 1 here. For num equal to 1, num is less than 10, num plus plus, right? So let's look at this program. What are we doing? Initialize the value of num, initialize loop variable. So we initialize the loop variable, test the loop variable. We tested the loop variable is less than 10. A loop body is here and increment. Now the working of for loop is a little different, right? Because we have num plus plus, this num plus plus is executed in for loop after the last statement of the loop body is executed. Num plus plus is executed after the last statement of the loop body is executed. What does that mean? It does not go like this: num equal to 1, num less than 10, execute num plus plus, and then do this. So it executes num equal to 1 only once, starting, initialize. Then every time it checks num less than 10. And then after the loop body has been executed, it checks for the condition. So what will be the output of this program? What will be the output of this program? Think. Okay, let's see. Java C for loop example, not Java. Java for loop example. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 9. Why till 9? Because 9 is less than 10 is true. 10 is less than 10 is not true. 10 is less than 10 is not true. Are these concepts clear? Are the differences between for, while and do while clear? Please ask all your doubts now. I'll wait for 30 seconds. If you did not understand for loop, please tell me. Write it in the chat box. I'll explain again. Or you can turn your mics on and ask your doubts. Did everybody understand for loop? Okay, let's see then. Please try this example then. I have modified this program. Num is equal to 10, num less than 10, num plus plus. What will be the output of this program? Please try it in your notebooks. What will be the output of this program? We'll have only 20 seconds, 30 seconds to try this out. Then we'll see the output.
Okay. The value of num is 10. Is 10 less than 10? No. 10 is not less than 10. So, what will be the output? There will be no output. There is no output. Why? It comes here, it initializes num to 10, then it checks if 10 is less than 10, which is false. The loop body is not executed. The loop body is not executed. What happens? Simply the program is over. The program is over. So let's continue. So the the test condition on for both the loops while and for is same. The loop body is executed till the time condition is true. So the initialization and increment portions of the loop, they are optional, but we should always do it. Even if we don't do it, the program will not show error, but we might not get the correct output. If we don't give a test condition, then it is always true. What does this mean? So if I write it like this is also correct. This is also correct. What will happen here? It will always be true. It will never stop. Same thing that we saw earlier. What happened? I said num is equal to 10 and increment num, but I missed the test condition. I missed the test condition. So what will be the output? It will continue to print numbers endlessly. Is it clear? It will continue to print numbers endlessly. So we'll see how do we correct this shortly. So when do we use for loop and when do you use while loop? If at the beginning, before starting the loop, if we know how many times that loop will execute, right? Like we know a definite value, like num is less than 5 or this loop will execute 10 times, then we use for loop. Then we use for loop. But if the loop depends on some condition, right, of the variable which will change when at runtime. We don't know how many times that loop might execute. Then we use while loop. Then we use while loop, right? So we saw break statement earlier, right? What did we see in the break statement? What does break statement do? Do you remember? What does break statement do? We saw that break statement was used where? In switch statements, right? We saw where were break statements used? In switch. We saw break. What was it doing? As soon as some part was executed, like in this case, 4 was executed, it used to end everything and reach here. What would happen if I had no break? What happens if I have no break? Everything was executed. Now what happens for loop? Hmm? What happens for loop? So break can also be used with loops, right? So as soon as we break, what will happen? What will happen? As soon as we break, what will happen? the loop will stop. As soon as it sees a break statement, the loop will stop. Got it? As soon as we see the loop break statement, the loop will stop. Let's look at an example for this. Uh, I equal to 0. Okay, let's not do it like this. So let's start num from 0, right? For I num equal to 0, num equal to 0, num less than 10, num plus plus. Let's have another variable y is equal to 0. Okay, now what do? We update y every time. Y is equal to y plus num. We can also add it as y plus equal to num. Both these statements are same. We saw that yesterday. Y is equal to y plus num can also be written as y plus equal to num. It expands to y equal to y plus num. Y equal to y plus num. So now I want to see what will happen now. First, now y is 0, num is 0, 0 plus 0 is 0. Next time, num will become 1. So I want to break when y is greater than 10. I simply say break, right? So system dot out dot println value of y is y, right? System dot out dot println, right? Breaking because y is greater than 10. What will happen now? Loop with break statement. What will happen now? Loop with break. There are errors. Where are the errors? First error is this. Second error is here. And that's it. Now, what happened? Y is 0, num is 0. Y plus num is also equal to 0. Right? So initially value of y is 0. Next time num becomes 1. Num becomes 1. Then y becomes y is 0. 0 plus 1 is 1. 1 is less than 1 is greater than 10. False. So it continues. Then y is 1 and num becomes 2. Num becomes 2. So y is equal to y plus num. 1 plus 2, which is 3. Which is 3. So is 3 greater than 10? No. Then y is 3 and num is 3. 3 plus 3 is 6. Is 6 greater than 10? No. Then y becomes 6 and num is 4. 6 plus 4 is 10. Is 10 greater than 10? No. Then y becomes 10 and num becomes 5. Then y is 15. 15 greater than 10? Yes. So at y equal to 5, num equal to 5, y becomes 15. So what happens? 15 is greater than 10. We execute break. And this loop stops execution. What happens? This loop stops execution. Is it clear? Is the concept clear? Please ask if you have any doubts. Okay, then let's continue. Continue. What does continue statement do? Continue statement is same as break statement with a small difference. What is the difference? So when I say continue, as soon as we see continue inside a loop, what happens? What happens? As soon as we see a continue statement in a loop, we stop executing the remaining statements and we start the next iteration of the loop. What do we do? As soon as we see continue, we stop executing the instruction, stop executing the remaining instructions and start the next iteration. Okay, so let's see. So let's see a problem. What is the problem? We want to print all the even numbers. We want to print all the even numbers. What is the condition? We want to print all the even numbers. Right? So let's see the program. So till we'll print all the even numbers till which point? Till 50. Okay. So don't get confused. Num is equal to 0. Num less than equal to 50. So what will happen now? Because it is less than equal to, it will include 50 also. Num plus plus. This is my for loop. Now, what is the condition for even? What is the condition for even? All the even numbers, when I divide them by 2, what is the remainder? 0. So let's look at it. So if I divide 10 by 2, what is the remainder? 0. Remainder. How do we get the remainder in Java? We saw the remainder operator is percent is 0. So what happens if I divide an odd number with 2? Let's say 15. Percent 2 is 1. So this is the even test. So if num percent 2 is equal to 1, what does it mean? If I divide a number by 2, if the remainder is 1, that is not completely divisible, then what will I do? What will I do? I will say continue, meaning this is not an even number. Go and check the next number, right? Else I print system.out.println. Okay, num is an even number. Now what will be the output of this program? What will be the output of this program? Think for a few seconds. What will be the output of this program?
Okay, let's see. So what are we doing? How do we run the program? First we compile it. No errors. So what does it say? 0 is a even number. See, now what happens? When num is 0, 0% 2 is equal to 1 becomes false. Why? Why? When we divide 0 by 2, the remainder is 0. So it says continue. When it says continue, directly go to this statement, and this is not executed. This is not executed. So whenever we see continue, we skip the remaining statements and we directly go to the for statement again. Is that clear? So when num was 0, even number. When num was 1, we saw 1% 2 is equal to 1. Num percent 2 is equal to 1. So what does that mean? This number is not divisible by 0. So what happens? We execute continue. When continue is executed, we go to the next statement, and this is not executed. Is it clear? Is it clear? How do we use continue? Please take few seconds to understand this and ask if you have any doubts. Please ask your doubts, please. Okay, let's continue then. So you don't want to overuse break and continue. Why? Because it degrades the performance of a statement. Also, it does not make the program readable. ठीक है? Got it? So we often want to use don't want to use if and switch statement. It means that the program is can be written in a better way. This is So next topic and the last topic for today is methods. So what are methods? So we now just saw loops. So when we did not want to we wanted to execute the same set of instructions again and again, we decided we'll use loops. We'll use loops. So what if we want to do a same set of operation again and again on different numbers? On different numbers. We use methods. So what is the syntax for a method? And have we seen a method before? Have we seen a method before? Yes. From the starting of this course, we have been looking at a method. This is the method. This is a method, main method. So what is there in a method? Method is nothing but a group of statements which are grouped together to perform an operation. To perform an operation, right? So let's look at our first method. Public class method example. Public static void main. Now let's say we want to add two numbers, int a, int b. What is a? A is equal to 10. B is equal to 20. We want to add these numbers with the help of a method. So now, hello. Okay, I thought somebody had a doubt. Okay, so how do we write a method? First, return type. What is the return type? The value that the method will return. Value that the method will return. What does void mean? Nothing. Void means empty. That this method does not return anything. This method does not return anything. Void add, then we call arguments. What is this? Arguments. What does argument means? The input that the method takes, right? So what is the structure of the method? Return type, method name, arguments, method body. What is return type? Value returned by the method. What does void mean? Method does not return any value. What does it mean? Does not return any value. Int a, int b is arguments. That means it will take two values as an argument. Whenever we call this method, we'll have to give it two numbers. Is it clear? So let's look at it. Let's take another variable to store the sum. Sum is equal to A plus B. System dot out dot println. What do we do? Sum is sum. What do we say? Sum is sum. Now we simply call the method from here. And we have to pass two integer values. Int A, int B, we have two integer values. Right? So what do we do? We save this file. What do we do? We save this file. We say A is equal to 10, B is equal to 20. We pass it to A and B. So sum is equal to A plus B. Sum becomes A plus B and it prints the sum here. So everything we write between these two is a comment, is comments, or the compiler ignores everything between. Whenever a compiler sees this and a closing this, it does not consider it as a part of the program. Right? Now what is happening? I have two values. I pass it to this and the sum will be printed. Now let's see. Let's compile it. Java C method example. Okay. Okay. The method name was add. We wrote sum. Sorry. Okay. Forgot to make it public. Oh. Okay. Let's do this. So what is happening here? It is complaining that we cannot find the method. Cannot find the method. Why? Why can't it find the method? Why can't it find this method? So the error is given. It says non-static method add cannot be referenced from a static content. What do? We make it static. For now, if we make it static, it will work. So we'll look at it. What can we do to call this method without making it static later on, right? When we do the class concepts, we'll look at it. For now, what happened? Int A 10, B 20, and answer is 30. Is there any doubts? Please ask. Is there any doubt? Please ask. So in the next class, we'll look at this. What does the static mean, and how, why we were able to call it after we declare static, and why we cannot call. This is related to memory concept, heap and stack, which we'll see in the next class. Okay, which we'll see in the next class. So for now, let's focus on these methods, right? So let's look at another example for a method. So what is the statement? Now given two numbers, we have to return the larger number. Like
class find larger number. So public static void main string else int number 1 int number 2, right? Int number 1 number 2. Number 1 is equal to 10, number 2 is equal to 20, number 2 is equal to 20. So now we have to find a method to find the larger of these two numbers. So what will that method do? What will that method do? First thing, public static method name is find large. So what will this method take as input? It will take it two numbers. Now, what does it method do? Method needs to check if A is greater than B. If A is greater than B, then A is larger. Else B is larger. So it's 4 o'clock. Simply check A is greater than B. What does that mean? System dot out dot println A number 1 is larger than number 2. Else what happened? It means B is greater than A. Then system dot out dot println number 2 is larger than number 1. Is it clear? You simply call find larger num1 num2. You simply do num1 and num2. Okay, we did not save this file. You have to save this file as oh, we did not give a return type. What is the return type? Void. It does not return any value. What will the output? Number 2 is larger than number 1. Larger is not the right term, greater. Okay. Now if I want to change the values, I can simply do it like this: 30, 23, that's it. The remaining program remains the same. Number 1 is greater than number 2. Is it okay? Okay. Now we looked at this void and we said the function has a return type also. So what is that return type? What does that mean? It means a function can also return a value. Method with return. Does it mean a method will return values too? So how do we see that? Let's say we have same number, same program of adding two numbers. Now we have a method which will return the value of type int. We have a method that will return the value of type int. That's the value of type int. Okay, so what does that mean? Int sum is equal to, I don't know, sum is equal to, we will calculate. I gave it two numbers a and b. I say sum is equal to a plus b, and then I say return this sum. So whoever calls me and gives me two numbers, you give the sum to the function who called me. Then I can say sum is equal to add a comma b. Now what will be there in this? Now what will be there in this sum? It will call add a b. Add a b will add the two numbers and return the sum here, right? Now then I can print system.out.println sum of the two numbers is sum. I made a mistake. What is that mistake? I did not assign values to num. 100, num2 is equal to 99. So what should be the output? Okay, num1, num2. Sum is 199. What happened? I passed 100 and 99 here. It added 100 plus 99 and returned 199 to here. So this was 199. Is it clear? If you have any doubts, please ask me. Okay. Let me see what we can do to increment this width. Okay, next session onwards, I'll increment the font. For now, let's continue with this. Okay, you guys cannot see the program. I hope this is better. Can you guys see this? So what happens in this? Num1, num2, we have a variable sum. Num1 is equal to 100, num2 is equal to 99. When we call add, we pass 100 and 99. What does this function method do? It adds the two number and returns the result. Result is saved here. Finally, we simply say sum of the two numbers is sum. So when we execute this, we get sum of two numbers is 199. So why do we use methods? So in a method, if we have to repeatedly add numbers again and again, so we don't want to do a plus b on every time. So we simply write a method that adds two numbers and we reuse that method every time. Example, so if you want to print all the numbers from 0 to 100 that are divisible by x, right? So we simply write a method that checks whether a number is divisible by x or not, and we reuse it on all the 100 numbers. Is it clear? Questions? Questions? Anybody has any questions? Okay, let's stop the class here then. You can go and practice in your lab now. Rajendra sir, are you there?
Yeah, Abhimanyu, thank you, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
And I request you all the colleges, please log in with your college names. Okay, today we have only less colleges still. GDC MOVA. Your GDC MOVA means you are from which college? You are from which college? Is my voice audible?
Yes, sir. Mova college was active in the chat, so I think they can hear you.
Okay, okay, no problem. Anyhow, we are trying to motivate all the colleges. They are logging from tomorrow onwards. They will come.
Okay, sir.
Okay. Thank you. Have you given any assignments to them?
So I've done the program in the class. They can practice the same programs, or I've given you assignment which has two programs from the previous.
Okay, 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 okay. Thank you, Abhimanyu. We will talk to you through over the phone if there is any issues are there.
Okay, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir.